Our sailing aims to send out a signal that we will continue our protest, like these protests along the borders. All Palestinians from different factions will stage protests until they get basic rights and Israel ends their occupations and blockade.
It was the first time a flotilla set sail from Gaza, trying to break Israel's blockade from the inside. But they didn't get very far before the Israeli Navy intercepted them, firing warning shots at one boat. Activists, students, and wounded protesters in need of medical treatment were all on board the vessels, setting their sights on Cyprus. But no one really expected the boats would get that far. Instead, organizers say they intended to protest a siege that's imposed a stranglehold on millions of Palestinians, prevented from leaving the Strip. Well, to tell us more about the protest, I'm joined from Gaza by human rights activist Ramadan al Hayek. Ramadan, good to have you on the Newsmakers. We're used to those trying to break the blockade from the outside in. This group of people, and I understand you're one of the organizers, you're trying to do it from the inside out. Tell me the thinking behind it.
Well, first of all, the idea was originated from the severe pain and suffering of the Palestinian people here in Gaza. If we are talking about a siege that has been imposed by the Israeli side, we are talking about 12 years ago. Until now, we are talking about more than 80% of unemployment rate, which is one of the highest rates in the world, and more than 70% of in food security, and more than 150,000 Palestinian students who have been graduated without any job or work nowadays. We are talking about more than 15% of the deaths of Palestinians here in Gaza Strip, especially, are due to cancer, due to the denial of the Israeli side to give them some kind of a treatment or cure. Yeah. So yesterday was the 8th anniversary of attacking Mavi Marmara, which was attacked by the Israeli Navy forces. So what we can say that the Israeli aggressions against the Palestinian people show no sign of ending.
Talking about the aggressions, a lot of people were killed. In one day, 60 people were killed at the border, or some even contest if it's the border with Israel. During the Great March of Return, thousands of people were wounded. Since March, people have been shot by live fire as they've been walking towards the border. Thankfully, even though this flotilla was intercepted, nobody was hurt. Is it a better way of protesting rather than to walk towards the border and know for sure that the Israelis will shoot and maim you and might even kill you?
Well, first of all, the Palestinian people here in Gaza Strip are trying to resist the occupation in a peaceful way by conducting peaceful events, such as yesterday, for example, when they launched and sailed a boat which is called the Freedom Boat towards Cyprus. On the 14th nautical miles, they were surrounded by 4 Israeli Navy forces and then dragged them to Ashdod seaport. So the Palestinian people, wherever they want to go, east or west, to protest, they want to convey their message to the world that we want to live as the other people in this free world, and we want our basic human rights as according to the international conventions which protect and support these rights. For example, Article number 13 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights stated that a citizen has his or her own right to leave a country, and his or her own right also to leave, to return back to the same country or other country.
I want to ask you what you think of a Trump advisor, Jason Greenblatt, and what he said on Twitter in response to what the Israeli Navy did. He said, and I'm going to quote him, "We commend the Israeli military for handling the so-called reverse flotilla with professionalism and compassion. They successfully de-escalated a dangerous situation. If Hamas cared for the welfare of its people as much as Israel does, that would be progress." So I wonder what you think of this, because part of the thinking for the flotilla was to open the eyes of the international community, as you say, to the suffering in Gaza and the siege. But this is the response we're seeing from somebody who has the ear of Donald Trump. How do you feel about that?
Well, no one can deny that Israel is an occupation power and has and conducted a lot of aggressions against the Palestinian people. And according to international conventions, there are a lot of conventions and dealings have been made in the UN, for example, that supported the Palestinian cause. When the Palestinians are going to resist the occupation power, they are resisting them in a peaceful way, according to their main rights, which is about, if we are talking about their land and by other rights. So the main important thing here is that the Palestinian people here are trying to do their best to face the challenges and obstacles that have been imposed by the Israeli side without any reason.
Right, and major obstacles. And as you mentioned, the Great March of Return, tens of thousands of people protesting peacefully on land, by land. And we saw now with the reverse flotilla, yes. Nobody was armed, nobody had weapons, trying to get to Cyprus and bust the blockade peacefully via the sea, right? Both parts of Gaza blockaded by the Israelis. While all of that is happening, Hamas and Islamic Jihad are firing rockets and mortars into Israel. Does that make things more difficult for you?
Well, actually, let us just go back a little bit in 2014, the last war on Gaza Strip, which resulted more than 2,300 Palestinian people have been killed. Yes, if we are, until now, there is some kind of a truce between the Palestinian factions and Israel. And unfortunately, Israel didn't respect these truce. So, and the Hamas and Jihad, in my opinion of view, they are just some kind of reactions toward Israel because of its aggressions and violations, especially for human rights and Palestinians in Gaza Strip. So the Palestinians just want from the international community to make some kind of a pressure on the Israeli side to deal with the Palestinians as humans, as human beings. If we are talking about the life and the consequences of siege in Gaza Strip, there is a severe shortages of electricity and especially severe shortages of medicines, which cause
Right, certainly. And but again, I just want to ask you, because the Great March, you have thousands of people going peacefully, and with the Flotilla, they're going peacefully. What Hamas and Islamic Jihad are doing, even if you feel they are justified, they're clearly not peaceful. So would you accept the argument that from the outside, people see that as violence, firing rockets and firing mortars on Israel as violence? So again, does that help or harm your cause because you're saying you want to peacefully protest against the Israeli occupation and the siege?
I'd like to ask the people outside, why they just see the Hamas and Jihad's rockets only, and they don't see the rockets of Israel, while they are like just training on the heads of our children and women and elderly people. If we are talking about the last 3 wars on Gaza Strip, we are talking about more than 4,000 Palestinian people have been killed. Let us just also inform you that in the Great Return March, more than 120 Palestinian people have also been killed on the borders, and none of the Israelis was killed. So the result of the Great Return March and even the flotilla toward the world was a peaceful event, and they just want to convey their message for the free world that we want to live and we will struggle for life.
Okay, so do you want both peaceful and violent resistance?
No, everyone in Palestine here and every Palestinian in Gaza Strip believe in peaceful resistance and peaceful events to gain back their rights.
But again, Ramadan, just for clarity, again, as I say, and I'm sorry to continue to repeat this, why is it so hard to say that that which Hamas and Jihad are doing doesn't help the situation? Because as you mentioned as well, the Israelis rain down bombs on the Gaza Strip and kill civilians. It makes it more difficult for you, doesn't it? Because you're protesting peacefully, but the leadership is firing rockets, and you know the response that it's going to get.
Unfortunately, we are in some kind of state of a revolution against Israeli occupation. So you might find people believe in violence against the occupation, and other people believe in a peaceful resistance against the occupation. And I'm the one who believe in peaceful resistance and events toward the occupation power here. It might be that the Palestinian factions some kind like interrupted these peaceful events, but this cannot. But no one can deny that these Palestinian factions, what are they doing? Is their right also to fight for struggle, to fight the occupation power according to the international conventions. A lot of international conventions support that the people of a state, whatever the state is to protect their state and to use resistance against the occupation power.
Okay, Ramadan al Hayek. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I would have loved to have continued. But I thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers.